I figured out what Siege mode is missing. The banter. No, I'm serious. Hear me out. The banter between the Space Marines and operations is not present in Siege mode. I spent a good 2 to 3 days worth of playtime in the Siege mode, and this is something I've picked up on. I think it's weird we don't have it in Siege. I hope this is something that's added in the next update or near the future. You know what? This is a good point. The banter does add a lot to the atmosphere and the immersion, you know, actually knowing about the Marine you are playing. However, I feel like we also have a lot of banter in operations. Not 100% sure what they could add in to Siege mode, but this is still a good point. Like, honestly, think about it. That means they did Siege mode basically without doing any sort of unique banter for that mode. That definitely proves that it was done, you know, a little bit later down the line, to be honest, because if they were able to do that, I'm sure they would do that. However, we still get some banter. I don't know about banter, but we at least get some spoken lines from the guardsmen. So, I mean, that's something. And honestly, they do add a lot. I feel like having guardsmen around, I just like doing it just because it adds to the atmosphere of Siege mode. There's more going on. You actually have some teammates with you. Well, you have an army with you, essentially, with guardsmen. So it just makes the battle feel larger, essentially. So, I look, when it comes to little things, I think it goes a far way. The details go a far way, especially in games like this, because it's always cool to, you know, turn around a corner and just, you know, notice something different whenever you can, essentially. However, still, I'm having a great time in Siege mode. If they did add banter, that would be kind of interesting. I would be very impressed, to be completely honest. I feel like this would be one of those things that devs, you know, obviously it sounds easy, but to get everybody, you know, together to record the lines and everything, if they haven't done that already, I imagine that could also be kind of expensive. So for the most part, I'm not 100% sure if this is something they would end up adding in the future, but I still think this is actually a noteworthy thing to talk about when it comes to Siege mode. Now, I'm not too sure if this is going to make or break Siege mode. If they end up adding something like this in the game, not 100% sure if this is something that would make Siege mode, you know, a better mode. Not too sure if this would bring players back to Siege mode. I'm not too sure if players left Siege mode. I feel like I always go back to it, but I never dropped it. So, I mean, hey, let me know in the comments if you're still playing Siege mode, but I do think this is a very interesting point. I mean, regardless, this is definitely something I hope players have either noticed or are interested about, because for the most part, this is definitely something that I think could make Siege mode better, but it's obviously a little bit intricate, so I wouldn't expect the devs to add any more banter. Let me know in the comments, actually, if you think the lack of banter, does that actually kind of, you know, make you enjoy the mode less than operations, essentially? I just want the ability to build some fortifications, like in Modern Warfare 2 Zombies, some physical control over the map to build fatal funnels and sight lines. That's actually a fair point. Now, if we're talking about exactly what is missing from Siege mode, which we'll definitely transition into that conversation, I think ultimately when it comes to building barriers and traps and stuff like that, I've said this before, I really just enjoy getting the job done myself. However, you also got to consider meltas. Meltas definitely are trap-like. So I think it would be kind of cool if there was a, you know, somewhere we could just add in a couple more meltas or something, another trap, I suppose. But ultimately, I don't think this is something that is actually missing from Siege mode. Again, we do have options for like shock grenades and everything like that. Like, honestly, when it comes to shock grenades, those might be the best traps in Siege mode. They are very underappreciated. So I think ultimately there's not really a fortification that comes to mind that I would like to add into the game that would improve the experience. I mean, I wouldn't really want a turret or anything. The only reason guardsmen work is because they actually take aggro. I mean, I guess maybe if we had, like, you know, turrets or something, maybe those could potentially take aggro. But still, for the most part, the Dreadnought's cool to see. But, like, I mean, it's cool to play with as well. But sometimes the Dreadnought can just flat out make a wave feel more boring. sometimes. That's why it's always good to use a Dreadnought in situations where it's like, wow, we really need a break here or something like that, you know, or situations that are just a little bit too heightened. So ultimately, I think the Dreadnought is still very fun to use and it still has its purpose, but if you're able to get through wave 15 without a Dreadnought, it's more fun to do that than to summon the Dreadnought. I do like seeing the Dreadnought. honestly, I like when everything in siege mode is built up. You know what I mean? When we have the guardsmen, when we have the dreadnought, when we have bots, when that is happening and everything's, everything's out there, it's very fun. But still, overall, with the combat initially, and not to mention the friction and those moments where things are just a little bit too close. With the dreadnought, it's like you just win automatically, essentially. Well, I will say, unless you're playing away from the dreadnought, you can probably still die. But if you're playing near the dreadnought, you should be fine for the most part. But yeah, dude, I still really enjoy siege mode. But I do like the fact that the devs made guardsmen a little bit cheaper, because I think getting guardsmen just adds a lot to the mode. It's a little bit more rich when you're able to increase the army size and get units like dreadnoughts. Potentially, maybe in siege mode they could add another unit. I'm just not too sure if they're able to do that. I just make my dude spam voice lines. Okay, that's one way to do it. Dude, also, when people do this in the game, that's always very funny. I mean, as far as, like, spamming the same line, I can see that being annoying. But whenever you see players just use the voice line when they're appropriate, or, like, when you do something big and do For the Emperor. See, that's the thing. You still have banter with For the Emperor. So, I mean, I understand it doesn't really have any detail to it, but it's still a really good calling to 100%. Every time when someone says For the Emperor, I'm definitely saying For the Emperor. It's honestly, dude, the fact that the devs added that, it made the game so much better. It is so funny how something little like that can just add to the universe, essentially. I agree, but I guess it makes sense. You aren't fighting the same amount of enemies in operations, so they have more time to talk. So I think because of the countdown between waves, they don't have time to really say much. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I've seen some people say they should just say something at the end of waves or something like that, but that is true. The actual storyline to siege mode, I'm not too sure if there is one besides protect our base. I'm pretty sure in the background that's all they really mention. The operations themselves actually have a storyline, and not to mention, I think there's actually like a lot of voice lines in exfiltration that I'm starting to appreciate more. So I mean, if overall you're a little bit disappointed in the banter we have in siege mode, maybe go back to like operations and maybe catch some lines that you haven't seen before. I feel like, as far as the lines our classes say to each other, I feel like I've seen a lot of them, probably all of them, but it's always cool to see them pop up. But I think the actual, like, operation-specific voice lines are the ones that are very cool. I mean, there has to be something for the tomb, right? For, the obelisk for the operation. When you go through the tomb, surely there's something, there's a mention of the chalice or something like that, I would assume so, for the most part. I would assume so. But yeah, this is something that this is more of the finer details for siege mode. I'm not too sure if siege mode is really missing anything like that large at this moment, to be completely honest. If I was to think of something that's missing for siege mode outside of the obvious, like, improving hard siege mode, I would say, I don't know, maybe I really can't think of much, like, as honestly, well, outside of fixing matchmaking as well. So it's the performance. It's the performance and the quality of life that siege mode needs a little bit of an update on. But I think with what they did for Dreadnought was great. So like the overall state of siege mode actually is a lot better now. It feels a lot better. I have more fun actually investing into guardsmen. You can actually get bots less, because I've noticed if you invest in guardsmen, you can actually avoid the wave 10 bot that I normally get. So I'm really only spending points in guardsmen from wave 6 through 10, and I'm saving some points from the bots, essentially. And then obviously for wave 15, we always have enough for the dreadnought. You can get guardsmen, get stims, and as long as you play well, you should have enough for the dreadnought yourself now, which is pretty interesting. I really like the fact that they adjusted the dreadnought points, because now if somebody leaves the game, it's not like the run's bricked. You can still maybe at least push a little farther, and you might have a dreadnought to basically fall back on, essentially. So yeah, I guess when it comes to siege mode, the one thing it's missing, I think, to be honest, would be cool if we had some unique boss fights. something like the Hive Trigon Prime, adding those in Siege mode. However, I can see the point where it kind of makes the operations with the Hive Tyrant and the operations with the Trigon Prime, it definitely makes them less unique. And I do like the unique nature the operations have. Operations are really fun right now. Absolute 2.0 is really fun right now, which is why I think a lot of people are a little bit concerned with what could potentially happen. But we will see. We will see. Ultimately, I think it's kind of interesting. The devs have been talking a lot about absolute difficulty and not so much about hard mode. The difficulty in hard mode is really good difficulty. That's why it's kind of weird that the devs are kind of focused on absolute difficulty, but I think it's in a pretty good spot. Hard mode is very hard for Siege mode, so I don't know. There's always that. It's kind of weird. But yeah, ultimately, when it comes to Siege mode, I think it's in a great spot. I would like to see maybe one time we can see something unique added to it, but I'm genuinely not sure if the devs are interested in adding any more to Siege mode. It's in a good spot right now. I could see where the devs just don't want to break it, essentially. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you think there's anything missing from Siege mode, if there's anything on your mind for Siege mode that you think can improve it, outside of like matchmaking and the stuff we have talked about earlier, or a couple days ago. Yeah, it would be cool if you were able to join games that, outside of Wave 5. But yeah, we will see. We will see. But yeah, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this. And thanks for watching.